Hey biscuits, welcome back. So I realized I've been doing a ton of vlogs on here and I haven't done a lot of sit down talking head. Let's talk about parenting, which I think is the majority of what I used to do on here. I've just been vlogging it up because I'm a crazy vlogging lady. So I thought today I would talk about the difference between a hospital birth and a birth center birth, which is similar to home birth but not quite the same tater. Because I'm 4 months postpartum now. I can't believe little Pear Bear's 4 months. Oh my gosh, she has changed so much. It is crazy. Just from like little newborn to little 4-month-old. I remembered that it went by fast. I didn't remember it went by this quickly. And if you were following along in the vlogs while I was pregnant, you remember I was really struggling with like, do I do a home birth? Do I do a birth center birth? Do I do a hospital birth? What will I be allowed to do? Because I was really sick during that pregnancy and I have really, really bad anemia. And at a point, I was so sick that I wasn't allowed to even do a birth center birth. I had to do a hospital birth, and then we managed to get my numbers up literally like 0.5 over what the requirement was. And it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. And so I was really stressing out. And I wish that there were more comparative videos of people that have kind of tried a couple different ones, I was not allowed to do a home birth. That wasn't an option. So I really wanted to try that because, I was born, my mom had me as a home birth and she had me as a free birth, which I didn't even know this term until I was researching labor styles with Pear Bear. So I guess she was back in the old days doing free birthing, which is a little terrifying for me. If you don't know, free birthing is no doctors, no midwives, you, your partner, your birthing partner, your spouse, there, and you're just giving birth. All natural. Which is really scary to me. I'm like, no, I want help. I want professionals. This is a big moment in your life. So with Abraham, I had a hospital birth. I never even thought about doing a home birth with him. And at the time, nothing in my insurance would cover a birth center birth, which is what I'd want to do with Abraham. And it was just too much money out of pocket at the time that I could not afford. Because I was trying to get my business off the ground when I was pregnant with him. I had no spare money whatsoever, and it is more expensive to do a birth center sometimes, depending on how your insurance works. And this is again in America, so it's different in different places. I found with the insurance I have as a self-employed person that it wasn't a lot more than what I would have paid in co-pays at the hospital. In fact, it probably evened out about the same. Maybe a little bit more, but not a ton. Hospitals were really expensive to give birth in. So I gave birth to my son in just a regular hospital setting, and they wouldn't let me do a water birth. That was an option at the hospital I gave birth to him at, but they didn't think I was far enough along in labor when I came in to get in the water yet. I now know they thought it would stall. They didn't tell me that at the time. They were just like, no, you can't do that. They really didn't explain, and that was one of my issues with why I didn't go with the hospital birth the second time around, is they didn't explain to me anything they were doing. They just told me this is how it's got to be. Don't argue, don't ask, they aren't going to answer any questions. This was just how it was going to be. And now, if they had explained it to me, oh, we don't want to do the water birth yet, we're worried it'll stall your labor. That would have been, I would have totally understood, and instead they were just like, no, we aren't going to do that. And with my son, I had him really fast. I think my water broke at 11:30 at night with him. I think contractions started at 12:30 or 1. And then I had him before 3 a.m. So it was a fast labor with him. And I was so glad of that because I came in and I didn't have a written birth plan. Because I was like, man, I don't want to jinx myself. I don't want to be like, this is how it's going to be. Because I never gave birth. I didn't know how it was. And I found it very intense. Like, it went really fast. And I hadn't done any birth classes. And, I'd read books about labor and the whole thing. And I didn't feel very prepared. So I found it kind of emotionally difficult that way. And then I found the labor experience physically, emotionally difficult, because I didn't feel like I had a lot of support of people there supporting me, and walking me through it. Instead, they were like, this is our job, this is what we're going to do. My mom came into the labor ward with me when I was giving birth, and she was good, but she was not doula trained, you know. And I'll go back and forth between the births. So with my second, and it's more than 6 years between them, because I took a really long time to decide to have a second kid. I had her in a birth center, and I was gonna have a doula, but because of COVID, and then secondary issues with the lovely doula, that was not their fault, I ended up having my sister there as kind of my support doula person, and she was great because she's given birth twice now. She has my 2 nephews, and I loved her, so adorable. Oh my goodness. I never show them on here because they are not vloggers. They are into their privacy, but I love my nephews. I have 3 nephews from 2 of my siblings, and I love being a nephew. It's so much fun. But she was really good about being supportive and lovely about it, and that made such a big difference. Yeah, that made such a big difference to have somebody that had gone through it and experienced birth and was really just there to support me and, you know, you okay, pat me on the back, give me something to throw up into, you know. I didn't feel judged or rushed or anything. And then I also had my midwife and my midwife's assistant there. And it was a totally different experience. It was empowering. It was fearsome. I didn't feel traumatized afterwards, unlike with the hospital birth that I had, which I felt really traumatized from, not from labor itself, but from the experience around me while I was trying to give birth, you know? And the birth center was a really empowering birth. And I can't tell you the difference it made to feel empowered, because birth is really intense. I know people are like, do hypnobirthing, labor won't hurt. I'm like, oh, labor hurts. It's just, no, labor hurts, trust me, it does. But it's just a different experience. I also took a hypnobirthing online class. Normally it's in person, but because of everything, it was online. And that really helped me just kind of focus, because what I did for like 2 months before I gave birth is I really wanted to build this birthing cocoon around me, so to speak. Is I wanted to get into the zone that I was bringing life into the world, and I was going to take care of myself and baby and family, and I was really going to focus on that, and that was going to be my focus. And so I did the birthing class, and I took time to breathe and think about it and visualize the birth, to kind of plan out different scenarios. And I sat down with my midwife and we planned out different scenarios, you know, to figure out, okay, nothing in detail, but just so that we kind of were in the groove and we knew what we were going to do. And it was such a different experience. I want all women to have empowering births. And it doesn't matter if you have a vaginal delivery, a C-section, emergency C-section, medicated vaginal delivery, unmedicated. It doesn't matter, right? It's all labor. Trust me, it's all intense. I've done 2 unmedicated vaginal deliveries, and that was my choice. Is like I didn't want to risk the complications that I thought I might have or the baby might have with knowing my body to do any medications for pain or anything. But I did, for the second birth for my daughter, get in the bathtub because I was transitioning too fast. I wanted to start pushing really, really soon, and my midwife was like, you know, you aren't ready yet, you can't push yet, you aren't dilated enough. So she stuck me in the bathtub, and I still pushed baby out in the bathtub before she was ready. Like, she was putting on her birthing gloves. They have these big giant like plastic length gloves that go up to here to help you with the water birth. And I was like, no, she's coming. So I caught my baby's head, my daughter's head, because she was kind of getting into the bath, you know, leaning into the bath to help me. And I was like, oh no, I know you said not to push, but this isn't optional anymore. And it was so healing to have an empowered birth. And it wasn't a pain-free birth. It was just really empowering. I felt supported. I felt safe. I felt that things were being explained to me well. Even though my daughter's birth didn't go as smoothly as my son's. Like, my son's birth went really smoothly. It was so quick. Like, water completely broke, went into active labor, you know, transition pushing stage. Like, it was just so quick and so classic. That's why the nurses at the hospital literally were calling down the hallway for the doctor, because I started pushing. They were like, oh my God, the baby's coming. and they never thought a first-time mom would, you know, I think within like 45 minutes get to the hospital, give birth there. There's no way. So my daughter, and I vlogged this, Biscuit, so you can go back and go see this. Oh man, maybe 5 or 6 a.m. or something, my water broke, I thought. And then I went and hung out at my sister's house for a little bit to see if contractions would hit. And then she drove me to the birth center while my brother-in-law and nephews all played with my son, which was so nice. It was so nice to just have like this family bubble of security because I knew everybody was safe and it was lovely. And then my labor totally stalled, completely, like to the point where I was talking to my sister and brother. I'm like, maybe I'll just go home, like, because I'd been having contractions, and not just breast aches, but actual contractions for like a month and a half, 2 months before labor. So I thought, like, what was this? And they tested for broken waters, and they said it was negative. And I knew what your water breaking was like. And what I found out with my daughter is that you have 2 sacks of water. I did not know this. Thank you, unschooling education. And apparently my secondary sac of water had broken and not my main. And she could see this. Once the placenta came out after I delivered, she was like, oh yeah, there it is. Okay. Because she was confused. Like, she could tell that I knew that my water had broken, but it wasn't showing. Labor had stalled. It was really weird experience. So I went and I walked around for several hours. I went for a walk, and I was still having occasionally really intense contractions. And then at like, I want to say 1:30, 2:30, labor, like, it really started in. Like, the contractions were coming. They weren't super regular, but they were just like increasing, and then they'd decrease a little bit, increase, and it was getting really intense. And then we were waiting for my brother-in-law to put the youngest of my nephews down for his nappy. And we had to shout, my sister and I had to shout, like, I'm sorry, we're going, take care of the kids, because I started having the urge to push. And I was like, oh, yeah, I recognize this sensation, because it's the only time in your life is labor. It's a certain sensation when your body is like, time to start pushing. And you just know it. It's unlike anything else. It is no other sensation in the entire world. It's like, yes, time to go. And I looked at her, and I remember being like, eyes really wide, like, I think we need to go. And then, of course, on the drive, my labor started to stall again. And I'm like, no. And I got there, and I was in intense labor. And I think, man, my midwife told me the exact timeline of that. I think it was about an hour 45 minutes, something. It was a very similar timeline from the hospital, actually, even though I had that stall out in my labor of when, and I think I had like 10 or 15 minutes of active pushing, and we slowed that down. Like, my body was trying to push faster. Yeah, so I think we got there. Yeah, I think I had like an hour of contractions and maybe an hour of active labor, and then she was born. And she was born in the bathtub water, which I hadn't decided if I wanted to do that yet, but I was so exhausted, physically shaking, by the time I was truly ready, like, to push, and she was ready to come out, that there was no way I was gonna make it to the bed to push. I was like, I could barely sit up enough to labor her out. I was like, oh my God, my body. And it was just such a totally different experience. And I think that if I'm gonna break it down, because that's kind of my story, but then I thought, telling my story, maybe that's not as helpful as also then breaking down the differences that I found that were helpful for me. I found that at birth center birth, you get every step explained to you as it's going on and beforehand. You get to be in a calmer space where there aren't beeping sounds, you aren't hooked up to things, you can walk around naturally. It is a more mellow, feminine, gentle vibe, whereas when you're hospital, it's got a more masculine, calculated, these are the steps, we aren't going to necessarily explain them to you, we're the professionals, just listen to us and be quiet. Whereas the birthing center allowed a much more raw, feminine, we know labor's intense, go for it kind of thing. And I really liked that. It made a very big difference to be in that feminine bubble of raw energy that is giving birth, instead of being told this is how it's going to be, we're the professionals. And of course, the midwife and everybody, total professionals, they got it all down. I still had to have IVs and things, but it was just a really big difference. I hear a little baby that needs some milkies, so I'm gonna have to pop off here. But I really wanted to share the differences that I found for me, because I loved having an empowered birth. It made me want to give birth again, which is not that I'm going to, but which is such a different sensation than I had after my son. After my son, I was like one and done. I didn't enjoy the labor. Probably it was so traumatic. You know, it took me 6 years to have the next kid. And I came out of the birthing center with my daughter after a couple hours, because they send you right home if nothing's wrong. Totally feeling like, oh, I could do that again. That was intense, but I could do that again. And that's how I feel like labor should be for women, you know. Even if it doesn't go quite to plan, like my labor didn't go quite to plan or anything. It wasn't like I was like, oh, perfect labor for me. But I felt empowered and I felt safe. And that was such a big difference. Whereas in the hospital, I felt insecure and not able to really lean into my birthing instinct, because, you know, they didn't want you to shout, they didn't want you to be in certain positions. In the birthing center, I was able to just kind of go with my intuition, and that made birth so much less traumatic for me. Okay, I gotta go feed baby. She needs some milk. Milkies. I will see you next vlog, my loves. Big hugs. If you are about to go into labor, if you are thinking about having another baby and like, oh, that labor experience was traumatic or it wasn't good, you know, look at your options. Talk to your medical providers. There are ways to do birth that don't need to be so traumatic. Even when things don't go to plan, even when things do go to plan, it can be a joyful, really empowering event in your life. And I hope more moms, we all get to talk about this. Love y'all.